First, I want to talk about something else that's going on, and it was going on while I was gone, and it's still going on, which is this upheaval on the left, on the streets, which is, of course, funded and paid for by guys like George Soros. These are, as Donald Trump tweeted this morning, these are professional anarchists and paid protesters, but they are tapping into something that has already been going on at universities where, of course, we know from watching Ben try and go and speak at universities that they already have shut down the American commitment to free speech. And, you know, the idea, this is kind of a three-tier attack. What's happening, it happens on the streets, it happens in the press, it happens in the political arena, and it's kind of interesting to watch the way these guys are flowing together, you know, even, and it is, you know, people are it's, you know, conservatives are people who can follow any change to disaster in their imaginations. That's who conservatives are. Conservatives are people who see a change and think that's the end of the world. Now it's over. Oh my God, something's different. Everything's good. That's why they're conservatives. That's their natural instinct. So I know people who are looking at this staunch conservative and saying, oh, that, you know, these guys, they can't win by voting, so they're going to win by just destroying the country. It's going to be a revolution, and this is, you know, this terrible thing. And even a guy like Michael Savage, who is really out there on the right, is suddenly urging Trump to not move so fast and not do so many controversial things, which that just strikes me as backing off. You know, I mean, it reminds me of an old Jules Pfeiffer cartoon about feminists. This is way back in the 70s or something. It was in the Village Voice, and he had a cartoon of a woman screaming, "I want, I want, I want," and then suddenly everything was dumped on her, and she said, "I don't want it." You know, and that's what that reminds me of. These conservatives have been screaming, we've got to change things, and now Trump has come along and he's changing things very quickly, and suddenly they're going, stop, you know. And so anyway, this obviously happened in Berkeley, but it also happened outside NYU, where Gavin McInnes tried to speak. I think this is last night. And you know Gavin McInnes, he's basically a comedian, a performance artist. He's really funny. He does a lot of anti-feminist stuff. And they had to turn out to stop this. And an NYU professor, because the thing about Berkeley, they kept saying these are outside agitators, and I'm sure that's largely true. I'm sure there's a lot of that going on. But this is an NYU college professor. I don't have her name. But she does look like that Melissa, was it Click, who was, yeah. But anyway, she is screaming at the police, telling them to beat up the people coming to see Gavin McInnes. This is her idea of fighting fascism, is telling the police to beat up people she disagrees with. Listen to this.
Why are you here? You're not here to protect these students from Nazis? No, you're not. This is completely f***ed up. And these students had to face them on your own. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be standing up to those Nazis. You should be protecting these students from hate. This is hate. These are assholes. And this is a joke. You're protecting the Nazis. It's a joke. You are a joke. You're grown boys. You're grown boys. And even the Black Lives. You're probably too, you mother. You're not protecting the NYU students here, and I'm disgusted. I'm a professor. How dare you? How dare you? Protect neo-Nazis. You.
I'm a professor. I mean, come on. So this is where these people are. This is their mindset, that this is fighting fascism, is to have the police beat up people you disagree with, which, of course, is fascism. I mean, Gavin McInnes, he's just there to entertain. And the reason they're so upset at Gavin and Milo is because Gavin and Milo are them. Gavin and Milo are both kind of left-wing people who feel the culture, who understand how to troll people, who understand how to do this, and that's why they hate him. And here's CNN reporting, and listen carefully to the way they report the protest. Now, these protests in the street, people dressed in black with masks on are beating up Trump supporters with one maced a Trump supporter. Others are carrying rods and beating people with them. Okay, that's what's happening in the streets of Berkeley, California, where the free speech movement was born. Ha ha ha. Okay, and this is CNN reporting.
There was a warning from the police, a verbal warning saying to get out of the square, and as we're backing up here, this is something clearly that they've got to get a handle on.
What is that actually burning? I mean, is that it looks like something with a door on it. Is it
It's a light. It's a street light. The kind of lights you see when there's a major event that the city pulls out. So it's a large light that was tipped over and now has been set on fire.
UC Berkeley police now have announced over Twitter that the speaker. UC Berkeley police have announced over Twitter that the speaker, who was scheduled to speak tonight on campus, has left the campus and is no longer there. Clearly, they are hoping to try to diffuse this as much as possible and get people to kind of move on. Does not look, I mean, Kyung, correct me if I'm wrong, does it look to you as if people are clearing out in response to the police?
Oh, no.
Oh no! So the police didn't really do very much to stop this going on. They didn't, they let this go on. Same thing happened at Gavin McInnes' speech. He was maced as he was walking up on stage, and ultimately the crowd got so rowdy he had to stop. And, CNN at one point referred to Milo as, I think the phrase they used was, he was an extreme right-wing conservative. I think, like Bernie Sanders is an extreme left-wing liberal, I mean, it's like he was an extreme right-wing conservative, extremist conservative right-winger, it's like they're justifying. Here's New York Times reporter Malini Rameir. She works for the New York Times, which used to be a newspaper. You may remember it, some of you. It's called How Violence Undermined the Berkeley Protests. So it's like Violence is some guy, some guy named Violence showed up. It's like that commercial where the girl has diarrhea and her diarrhea is played by another woman, It's like Violence showed up and disrupted the protests, So here she says, I saw someone wearing all black walk up to a student wearing a suit and say, you look like a Nazi. The student was confused, but before he could reply, the black-clad person pepper sprayed him and hit him on the back with a rod. This is taking place in America, by the way, just so we're clear about this. The reporter says, I ran after the student who was attacked to get his name and more information. He told me that he is a Syrian Muslim. Before I could find out more, he fled, fearing another attack. Amid the chaos came word the event had been canceled. It was clear early on that the majority of violent protesters most likely were not from the campus. Still, in the aftermath, I heard people say that peaceful demonstrations would not have succeeded in preventing Mr. Yiannopoulos from speaking. So was violence appropriate, she asks? A Trump supporter was hurt. A Syrian Muslim student was hurt. Does either of those statements seem more outrageous than the other? I mean, this is, was violence appropriate to stop Milo Yiannopoulos from speaking? So here is Milo speaking out. I want to get cut number 3 here.
But it turns out that the progressive left, the social justice left, the feminist Black Lives Matter, Antifa left, the hard left, which has become so utterly antithetical to free speech in the last few years, is taking a turn post-Trump's election where they simply will not allow any speaker on campus, even somebody as silly and harmless and gay as me, to have their voice heard. They won't allow students to listen to differing points of view. They're absolutely petrified by alternative visions of how the world ought to look, and people with arguments and fact and reason that don't conform to the crazy social justice left vision of the universe. So I was evacuated by my security detail and by the police tonight from UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley, of course, being the home of the free speech movement. It's both ironic and sad that this campus appears to be no friend to free speech anymore.
And this, I've talked about Milo before. I actually admire his talent a lot, and I respect his intelligence, and I respect what he's trying to do. He's trying to take the fact that he's gay, and he had the dangerous faggot tour and all this stuff. He really knows exactly where to get him. He's an icon of what the left thinks the left should look like, and he's a Trump supporting right winger. And I have talked about the fact that I think sometimes he has justified evil in justifying kind of that section of the alt-right, which has now become a meaningless phrase, meaning anybody the media dislikes. But he has occasionally justified, the white supremacists as being kind of trolls, as being ironic. The anti-Semitism is just ironic. They're just trying to say things. But, there is this place where you cross over from irony into evil, and evil will always trump irony. That's the thing. You can always be sort of saying, oh, yes, I was just being ironic when I beat that man to death. It was just a comment on our times. It was kind of performance art, However, I think one of the things that you will notice, by the way, with the Trump administration is now they're in power, all that alt-right stuff has gone away. And Milo was on Breitbart writing that he was against white supremacy, that that was not the way to go. That's not what he was looking for. And I think, I think that once they rode into power, they understood everyone around Trump, not everyone around Trump, but so many people in his family are married to Jews or sleeping with Jews or have converted to Judaism. This is not an anti-Semitic administration. It's not a racist administration, I don't think, at all. But that, of course, is always the left's go-to phrase. So they find the people in the crowd who are racist. And it is possible, and I think it is true, that Milo may have gone down that road a little bit, and I think he's realized that now. However, he still has a right to speak and do his routine, and basically his routine is against political correctness.